Hello, my friends. Welcome to The Movement with Dan Unitas. I wanted to talk on the topic today of what it's like to go through a divorce and just the general idea that most divorces, I think, would not be as amicable as I think men would like them to be. I think, I went through a divorce 6 years ago. It was a very painful process for me. It lasted, I think most divorces are going to be lasting, you know, probably 5 times longer than you think they're going to last. And they, once things kind of get into it, and then divorce can be very nasty. Divorces probably cost about 10 times what you think that they should cost. So it's a very difficult process once you are entering it, and it seems like it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I wanted to kind of talk about that. So I think a lot of people, a lot of men, when they're going through a divorce, might feel, well, hey, the marriage didn't work out, but we have kids together, so there's no point in being hateful towards each other. So the best thing to do would be to cut ties, and then ultimately, but do so in a way that where we do so amicably, so we're not going to be having issues when it comes to co-parenting our children together. So I think men can often, just get this sense that let's break up and just close this chapter of our lives and open up a new chapter of our lives where things are going to be, let's not tear each other up for the sake of the kids. And so I think that that's very logical and that makes sense. But I think, unfortunately, I was listening to a divorce, like a famous divorce lawyer making the rounds on YouTube, and he made the comment. He says, "Look, a lot of guys come to my office and they think they're going to have an amicable divorce, and it's like the first question he asks is, well, did you have an amicable marriage? And if you didn't have an amicable marriage, why would you think that you'd have an amicable divorce?" And I thought that that's really difficult to hear, that message, but I think it's very intuitive and it makes sense. And so that was my experience as well. I did not have an amicable marriage, and I did not have an amicable divorce. And so I think a lot of men are kind of optimistic about how the divorce proceedings will go, but ultimately are very shocked and saddened when they realize this is not going to go well. It's very common amongst just general advice that's given on like men's support groups forums that, hey, everything might seem hunky-dory, but then once the woman starts talking to her family, or once the woman starts talking to lawyers, things get interesting real quick. And when I say interesting, I mean really bad, because now all of a sudden it's it's you are in a relationship with this person, and you are in maybe your parents together, and now all of a sudden you've split. And as soon as that has kind of been established that a divorce is taking place, now all of a sudden the marriage is over, and now it becomes a business transaction. Now it becomes, how are we splitting our finances up? And I often think about marriage and divorce like being kind of like, when you're in a relationship and the relationship is strong, it's like rope that's being bound together, but there's tension on the rope. People are pulling one way or the other, and then as things start to break up, the rope starts to fray, and then starts to lessen its connection, and then all of a sudden it's just the final strand, and once that final strand breaks, it's just an explosive rip apart to the different poles. And that's kind of how a divorce works, and it's a very painful process as those strands of the rope are unwinding and snapping. And you look at your partner, and all of a sudden you might not see a partner. You might start to see an enemy who is you have a feeling that they're trying to get you. One thing I'll also say about divorce is that most people in a divorce do not feel that they came out on the. Most people don't feel like they won in a divorce. Most people, it's very common that both people, regardless of the man or the woman, both people feel that they lost out big time. Both people feel that the entire process was unfair to them. Both people feel that they're disappointed in how their partner acted. That's very common. Divorce is a very, very messy thing. And a lot of times we, try to make appeals and in our head think, well, I negotiated in good faith. Why is this person not happy? Well, they're not happy with you because their lives are being torn and torn asunder effectively. I think women absolutely crave security in their lives. The women crave financial security, emotional security, physical security. A divorce represents the exact opposite of a woman obtaining security. It's the she is thinking, where am I going to be living? Am I going to be making enough money to maintain a household? What's going to happen with my babies, my kids? And so, it's, again, I think a lot of men go into a divorce thinking, well, let's just be adults here, and let's be amicable. And then they soon find out that forces are conspiring to make that anything but. I think one of the most painful parts of the divorce process is once the lawyers get involved and you feel that you are, in an ideal relationship, there's no ideal divorce, obviously, but in a more amicable divorce, the divorcing parties are able to have a sit down and they're able to discuss things in a mature and adult fashion. And they say, look, this is what you want. This is what I want. This is what I think is fair. This is what you think is fair. And they're able to have productive discussions. A lot of times when a divorce is happening, most divorces are initiated by women. And I've found in my talking with men throughout the years on the topic that a lot of times the woman has kind of quietly quit the marriage, meaning like 6 months to a year prior to her filing for a divorce, she has decided that she's going to leave. And so it's taken a while for her to reinforce that within her that this is the right thing to do, and she will be looking for more and more evidence throughout those months to say, this is just not going to work. So that, my husband had a time where he could have made a difference, but just I've given my all to this marriage, and I don't see him changing, and I need something different. And so by time the D word comes out and they maybe serving the husband with papers and kicking the process off, the husband might feel, hey, wait a second, time out. Like what happened to till death do us part? Let's work on this. Let's go to counseling. And so he is in denial about the actual state of the relationship, where the woman is a lot more driving the process. She knows what's happening. From that perspective, I think that I often encourage men to realize, like, you're far behind. Men are often in these cases, they're just getting to realize what's about to happen, whereas the woman has been kind of, I don't want to say fantasizing about it, but she's been thinking about her life after the divorce. She's been contemplating the divorce proceedings for some time, and so the men are wildly behind. And I think that I often encourage men to be very aware of that fact and understand men typically have a more protective instinct over women, whereas I think women are more concerned. I'm talking averages, and this certainly doesn't apply with all people, but I do think, again, I think that women are very focused on security, and the security means the security for themselves and then also for the children. I think it's much more common for women to ask for a lot more custody of the children, and also to ask for the house. And so for a man, a man who's I think men often get screwed in these relationships, these dealings, because of the fact that they're coming from a deficit. They're not realizing they're trying to play catch up, and they're still where the woman is kind of over the relationship and moved on emotionally and mentally. The man is still in the relationship, and he's mourning the relationship and also grieving the relationship. And men that typically play more of a protector role they might be feeling, I've let my wife down. I feel shame. I feel guilt. I feel, I still want to try to make it work, or they're trying to play nice because they out of any chance that they can save the relationship. And when it comes down to the divorce, which is now like a business transaction, I think that men can find themselves at a deficit. And I encourage men to really think on that, because at the end of the day, the law or the prenup that's going to govern your divorce and what's considered fair is unique to you. It's unique to your state, and it's unique to whatever, if you had a prenuptial agreement with each other. And I strongly encourage men, it's, be understanding, be open-minded, be compassionate, but at the same time, don't just give away everything. Particularly just don't just, I'm just going to give her the house, I'm going to go on my merry way. I think it's important that both people are, negotiate in good faith. I think I would give this advice to women or men that go through a divorce. When you're going through a negotiation, you want to, I made a mistake in my divorce to be the nice guy and say, okay, well, I don't want to have a nasty divorce. I'm just going to negotiate for what I think is fair. And unfortunately, if you have $100 to divide and you say, Well, hey, I think it's, I mean, obviously it's fair if I get 50 and you get 50, and that's the deal that you put out on the table. Well, if you're in a negotiation, what's the other person going to say? You're assuming that the person is going to act in good faith and say, well, that sounds fair to me. Let's shake on it and be done. But in actuality, when you're in a negotiation for, however much assets you have between the two of you, things don't necessarily, both people are not going to see eye to eye. Again, both people are going to be motivated by their own selfish needs after the marriage, not necessarily caring about what you get. So that the other person might say, well, no, I think 70% for me and 50 and 30% for you is fair. So when you're negotiating, I strongly recommend you need to be asking for more than you think is fair up front, so that there's meat on the bone to kind of walk back on the negotiation. And that's just smart. It's just, so ultimately you could say, well, I want to get 60% and you get 40%, and the person can say, that's not fair. I want 50% and you get 50%, and you say, I'll take that deal. And that's, you arrived at something that's fair. You gotta ask for, my mom would always tell me as a kid, if you don't ask, you don't get. I think, when a divorce is not amicable, it can be very traumatizing. If you go through a divorce, things bleed out for weeks and months. If you are in a divorce and the other person doesn't really want the divorce to happen, they can really slow down the process immensely, because maybe they're a person that lives in denial, and they don't want what's about to happen to them, so they won't fill out paperwork, they won't get it back to you. You waste a lot of money kind of going back and forth between the different attorneys. And then so it becomes a process where sometimes it could become a multi-year process where you all of a sudden, I had times where I would have, massive amounts of stress just opening my inbox, because I was worried that I would have an email from a lawyer that had gotten a correspondence from the opposing counsel, and then you're worried about, okay, what kind of new shenanigans are they presenting now? How is this going to ruin my life even more? And you get just so stressed out about the whole thing. I think for me, it's my advice to somebody going through a divorce is you want to negotiate and be firm and be assertive, not just give away everything. But at the same time, you have to realize that you don't want to be somebody that's over confrontational or over, spiteful and trying to massively just make sure that you get every little thing exactly correct. It's actually very difficult for people that are very detail oriented to go through a divorce, because you end up spending a lot of time cataloging a lot of things. You end up asking a lot of what if questions to the attorney, and all of this stuff adds up to massive attorney's fees. And at the end of the day, the attorneys are the ones that win in a divorce. So I would say a lot of times, if you live in a state that's like called equitable distribution, people have to understand equal is not the same word as equitable. Equitable distribution means the judge will say, hey, I want both the husband and the wife after the divorce to kind of be in an equitable standing, meaning that they both have a similar path to success, of the similar amounts of success. So you might say, okay, well, I brought a bunch of non-marital assets into this marriage. That's mine, because that's going to be off the table. And you would be surprised in a very horrific way if that did not end up being the case. You can make that is a very logical argument. I think any rational person would agree with you, but that doesn't mean what you think is going to happen, or what you think is fair, what you think is common sense, is necessarily what the law is. And you don't get to decide what the law is. So that's another thing is, as you're going through a divorce, accepting what the law is versus accepting what you think is right. There might be a large discrepancy there, and that might cause you a lot of. Just remember, your attorney is very expensive, and your attorney is not there to be a therapist. They might perform that role and get you on the phone for hours on end while you are going through a lot of emotional baggage, and decrying how unfair the whole process is. But you're just padding their pockets. So another thing I'll say is, like, it's very important to go get help. Go get help from a therapist, and go get help from maybe like a men's support group. It's very vital that you have a support group through this time. The point that I wanted to make on the equitable distribution is understanding, you want to get a lawyer that you feel is really competent and that is really on your side. It's very, very difficult, because a lot of time the whole idea of having a lawyer is the longer it drags out, the more money they make, right? So, it's sometimes you might feel like your lawyer is working against you by not, reaching decisive, swift action. And a lot of times your lawyer might not be somebody that is, really keen on necessarily winning something. They might just feel, you might just feel like they're going through the motions, and allowing things to happen that are unfair to you. So that can be a very difficult waters to navigate. My advice, that I firmly believe in, is you gotta put aside what you think is right and put aside what you think is fair, and you gotta get a lawyer that you trust, which is very difficult. Get a lawyer and you want to establish what is reasonable here given the law. Okay, what is reasonable, and you want to get from point A to point B as quickly as humanly possible, and I'll touch on that in a second. So, if ultimately the judge might tell you, hey, I'm going to grant your ex-wife 60% of the estate, and you're going to get 40%. You might look at that and be like, well, no, like it should be 50-50. I don't want to lose my shirt here. But guess what? You don't get to decide that. The judge gets to decide that. And if you go to a trial, you're talking about a lot of money being expended on a trial, ultimately to get the same result potentially. So it's very hard. If you feel like, in my case, if I didn't feel that the end result was fair, but had I known that the end result was what I was ultimately gonna establish by fighting so hard over a period of years and spending tens of thousands of dollars, I would have just jumped right through that. And so again, that's why I'm emphasizing you have to understand like what is reasonable within the confines of the law of your state or your prenuptial agreement. And you gotta, the sooner that you can accept it, the sooner you can get on to getting on, moving on with your life. Divorce is awful because you're effectively in like a limbo state for a long time. And when you're in a limbo state, your cone of vision for your future is day by day. It's looking down at your feet and you're thinking, there's no hope. This divorce is going to never end. I'm going to be, you're watching your bank account drain exponentially as you're going, and you just feel like this is a nightmare. I feel like I'm being dissected on a table here by all of these people, and I have no control over my life. There's a distinct lack of feeling like you're not in control of your own life. And so the sooner you can get through a divorce proceedings, the faster you're going to be able to get on with your life, and your vision cone can come up and you say, wow, there's life after divorce, and I'm my own man again, and I don't have to be in this terrible relationship. Now if you have kids, you can go to your own place, you can have your own rules, and you can make your own vibe. And that you have freedom. You have freedom to do that. And so without somebody looking over your shoulder telling you that you're an idiot or telling you that you're no good or you can't do anything, you get to have your life back, and you get to decide, no, I'm actually you start to build yourself up and say, I'm a loving father, and I'm going to lean into that. Another reason why you really want to get through the divorce proceedings as quickly as humanly possible is because the longer a divorce drags out, the more despondent and the more you have to be, amount of time you have to be traumatized. It's like putting two people into gladiatorial combat with each other, where they're stabbing each other with knives and they're trying to claw each other's eyes out. And then at the end of the divorce, the judge, this is how it goes at the end of the divorce. I had not really considered this, but at the end of the divorce, the judge is, in my case, the judge was very pleasant. And the judge said, okay, your divorce is now final. The ink you've signed, the ink is dry. Best of luck to you. And it was all this kind of, positive, cordial send-off. It was very confusing to me at the time. And then I realized, like, the judge is basically saying, hey, good luck with your lives, and, go out there and now you got to co-parent your kids together. Well, how the hell are you supposed to co-parent your kids together if you just you were just trying to bludgeon each other to death and claw each other's eyes out? So to that end, I really encourage men, and I also encourage women, try to be the bigger person, because the more damage that you inflict on this person, the less likely it is that you're going to be able to, successfully co-parent with this person in the future. I strongly recommend that if you're seeing a lot of animosity being exchanged, it's you're in a divorce situation and you're still grappling with the marriage ending, but now you're in an intense negotiation, which is going to dictate the rest of your lives, and it's going to massively impact your children and massively impact your quality of life. And so it's hard when you're processing you're processing what you've done in the relationship and the shortcomings that you've had, and you're processing the fact that your ex-partner is not owning up to any of that stuff, and or maybe they are, but they're not taking accountability for certain things, and at the same time they're asking for things that are wildly unfair. So you feel pitted against this person. But again, like I'm saying, the point I'm trying to make is, if you slash somebody open, metaphorically, of course, you are opening wounds within that person, and wounds take a long time to heal. And if they talk about, there's nobody wins in a knife fight. If you're slashing them, you're going to get slashed yourself. So the more you are engaging in a knife fight with, metaphorically again, with your partner, the more wounds you're opening up on them, and the more wounds you're opening up on yourself. And so when you have to co-parent somebody, wounds take time to heal. The more wounds that you open up on that person, and the more wounds that you incur during that fight, the less likely it's going to be that you are going to be able to heal those wounds in a timely manner and be good co-parents with each other. So that's how it goes from a marriage that's not amicable to a divorce that's not amicable to a co-parenting situation that's not amicable. And believe me, from experience, that can be a nightmare scenario that takes many, many, many years to process and heal from. And it's just, for me, my advice would be, negotiate assertively, ask for more than you feel is necessary, so you get some meat on the bone to walk it back and actually receive a fair settlement. But at the same time, don't try to fight this person endlessly. Don't try to fight them out of spite. Don't try to prove a point. The faster that you can get through a divorce, the happier you're going to be after the divorce. If you go through a long, protracted divorce and spend $100,000, $200,000, it's going to make you bitter. It's going to make you bitter about the life, not only that you lost, that you had, but the life that you could have had you not gone through this divorce. And you're going to end up hating your ex spouse. And then that's going to make your children's lives worse, because you're going to have this hatred that's going to be very difficult for you to keep mum's the word on. It's going to be very difficult to be tight-lipped when this other person acted, in your perception, acted egregiously. But they're viewing you in maybe this similar way. So it's not, you gotta do your best to try to avoid playing in the muck. I know it's very difficult. This topic was about people expecting that their divorce is going to be amicable, and it ended up being anything but. And I just want to tell people out there, even if you go through a difficult divorce and you did scratch each other's eyes out, and you did incur a lot of damage, and you do have a lot of trauma coming out of it, just realize that there's a lot of opportunity for life after divorce. Sometime my divorce humbled me in a great many ways, and it was a renaissance period in my life where I was brought low and humbled. And I had to come to terms with a lot of things about myself that I didn't like to see. And so there was a moment for me where it was a turning point. I really felt that I was a better person. I really felt that I felt a lack of the world was not reflecting the value that I felt that I had within myself. And then I had to take a hard look in the mirror, and I realized that I had a lot of work to do on myself, and I had a mountain to climb. And so I started, I was driven by that. I said, look, I don't want to have repeats of this mistake. I don't want to, I want to I don't want to just have intentions of being a good husband or a good partner, a good father. I want to be that. And so I want to stop looking for external validation from other people, and I want to turn my intentions into actions. And so for me, my divorce was, kind of a reboot of my life, and one that I think was really very generative and highly necessary for me to become the person that I am today. And so, if you go through a nasty divorce and you go through, your bank account goes down massively and dwindles, and you're worried about the future, that's normal. It's normal to worry about the future, but I strongly encourage people to realize there's life after divorce. You just kind of have to get there. So your life begins after that ink is dry on the divorce agreement. So even if you're going through a really shitty divorce right now, hang in there. Do your best to kind of get through the process as quickly as you can, and not engaging in combat with the other person, because that hurts you too. And I think I'll end there. I wish you the best of luck, and keep hope alive, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.